What if I told you that the cure for societal collapse, personal despair, and spiritual confusion was right in front of you, had been all along? Last episode, we witnessed the sages paint a devastating portrait of Kali Yuga. Institutions corrupted, people lost, moral anchors dissolved. They asked the ultimate question: is there any hope? Any way back? Today, Suta gives his answer. This retelling has been adapted for modern audiences, based on J.L. Shastri's English translation. The air in the forest clearing was thick with anticipation. The sages had just finished describing the nightmare of their age. Suta sat quietly for a moment, his eyes closed. Those watching could see his lips moving silently, as if calling upon something beyond himself. When he finally opened his eyes, they shone with a peculiar light, part compassion, part absolute certainty. He began, his voice warm but steady. "O saintly men, the question you've put to me is absolutely crucial, and I'm going to answer it. But first I need you to understand something. What I'm about to share comes not from my own cleverness, but from my teacher Vyasa, that great sage, who is the benefactor of all three worlds. I'm remembering him now as I speak to you." He paused, making sure everyone was paying full attention. "All of you, listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you might sound too simple to work, but sometimes the most powerful remedies are the ones hiding in plain sight." Suta leant forward, his voice taking on an almost urgent quality, the entire essence of Vedanta, all that profound wisdom about the nature of reality, consciousness, and liberation is contained in the excellent Shiva Purana. This isn't just a collection of entertaining stories. It's a complete system for dispelling all sins and attaining the highest truth, Brahma itself. O wisdom seekers, the great glory of Shiva that destroys the sins of this Kali age unfolds itself in this Purana, and it yields the fruits of all four aims of life: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. That is, righteous living, material prosperity, fulfilled desires, and ultimate liberation. Everything you actually need. Through single-minded study of this most excellent Shiva Purana, even in these difficult times, people can attain complete salvation. Suta's voice grew more intense, his words coming in a rhythmic pattern that felt almost like poetry. It is only as long as the Shiva Purana has not risen high, in the world that Brahmahatya, the sin of destroying wisdom itself, and other terrible sins display themselves freely. It is only as long as the Shiva Purana has not risen high, in the world that the evil characteristics of Kali Yuga roam about fearlessly, unchecked. It is only as long as the Shiva Purana has not risen high, in the world that different sacred texts clash together in pointless disputes, each claiming to be the only truth. It is difficult even for great souls to comprehend Shiva's true nature. As long as the Shiva Purana has not risen high in the world, the cruel attendants of Yama, those forces that drag us towards suffering and death, roam about fearlessly as long as the Shiva Purana has not risen high in the world. Suta paused, watching the sages process this bold claim. Then he continued with even more specific examples. All the other Puranas roar loudly on the earth, competing for attention. All the holy centers enter into mutual disputes about which is most sacred. All the mantras argue about which is most powerful. All the pilgrimage sites claim supremacy over others. Even the various forms of charity, the gods themselves, the philosophical schools, all engage in endless conflicts and disputes. This is the condition as long as the Shiva Purana has not risen high in the world. One of the younger sages couldn't contain himself, but Suta, you're claiming that a single text, one collection of stories, can address all these conflicts. How? Suta smiled gently, because it addresses the root, not just the symptoms. But let me tell you about the specific benefits. and you can judge for yourself. O foremost amongst Brahmanical sages, I cannot adequately describe the fruit that comes from reciting and listening to this Shiva Purana. The benefits are almost beyond words. But let me try to give you a sense of it, as Vyasa described it to me. Listen carefully to what can happen. He who reads even a single stanza, or even half a stanza, with genuine devotion becomes free from sin instantaneously. Right in that moment, something shifts. He who reads every day as much of the Shiva Purana as he can, with devotion and alertness, is called Jivan Mukta, a living, liberated soul. Not someone who will be free someday, but someone who is free right now, while still living in the world. He who continues to honor this Shiva Purana daily derives the spiritual benefit of the ancient horse sacrifice, one of the most elaborate and powerful rituals ever conceived. He who listens to the Shiva Purana with a sincere heart, even from a teacher who isn't particularly gifted, is freed from sin. He who simply bows near this Shiva Purana derives the fruit of adoring all the gods, every beneficial force in the cosmos. A sage asked, "What about those who can't just listen, but who want to spread this teaching?" Suta's face lit up. Yes. Listen to the meritorious benefit that comes to someone who copies the Shiva Purana and gives manuscripts to devotees of Shiva. They will gain the benefit, very difficult to attain in the world, that comes from deep study of sacred texts and from commenting on the Vedas themselves. In other words, they become teachers simply by facilitating others' access to this wisdom. And here's something special. He who observes fast on Chaturdashi, the 14th lunar day, a particularly auspicious time, and conducts discourses on the Shiva Purana in the assembly of Shiva's devotees is the most excellent of all. Such a person derives the benefit of repeating the Gayatri mantra, syllable by syllable, with complete concentration. They enjoy all worldly pleasures here and attain salvation hereafter. Suta leant back, his eyes distant as if seeing something beautiful. Let me tell you about a particularly powerful practice. If someone reads or listens to this Purana after observing fast on the Chaturdashi day, keeping awake through the night in meditation and contemplation, this is the truth. I'm telling you the absolute truth. They will get the same benefit as someone who makes gifts of wealth equal to their own body weight to the wisest Brahmins during a complete solar eclipse, at all the holy centers, like Kurukshetra, and does this many times over. Can you imagine that level of spiritual merit accessible through focused attention on these stories? One of the older sages, who had been listening with increasing intensity, asked, "What about those of us who make this a daily practice?" Suta nodded with approval. Indra and the other devas, the beneficial forces of the universe, wait eagerly for the directives of the person who chants day and night the verses of the Shiva Purana. The cosmos itself pays attention to such a person. The sacred rites performed by someone who regularly reads or listens to the Shiva Purana are effective millions of times more than usual. Their prayers carry unusual power. And here's something remarkable. He who reads the Rudra Samhita portion, that section about Rudra's manifestations and transformations, with a pure and concentrated mind, becomes a purified soul within 3 days, even if they had committed terrible acts. If someone reads the Rudra Samhita 3 times a day near an image of Bhairava, refraining from useless talk, they shall get all cherished desires fulfilled. If someone who has committed terrible wrongs walk around Thavata and Bilva trees whilst reciting verses from the Rudra Samhita, they will become purified completely. The Kailasa Samhita is even greater than that. It's of Vedic status and stature. The meaning of pranava, the sacred syllable Om, the fundamental vibration, is amplified in it. Suta paused, his voice dropping to something like reverence. Lord Shiva knows the greatness of Kailasa Samhita in its entirety. Vyasa knows half of it, and I know half of what Vyasa knows. That's how profound it is. But even a part of it purifies the mind instantaneously. O sages, I've searched everywhere, and I do not see a sin that cannot be quelled by the Rudra Samhita, not one. Think of it this way. Lord Shiva churned the ocean of the Upanishads and created this nectar, which he handed over to Lord Karthikeya, our dear Kumara himself. The devotee who drinks this nectar becomes immortal. Suta's voice grew stronger. If someone intends to perform brahmahatya, or expiatory rites for terrible wrongs, the destruction of wisdom, the violation of sacred trusts, any of it, they should read the Samhita for a month. They shall be freed of that sin by a single recital. That Samhita destroys the sin originating from accepting monetary gifts from corrupted sources, partaking of defiled food, and indulging in foul speech. The benefit derived by a person who reads Samhita in a grove of bilva trees in a temple of Shiva is beyond description. If someone reads that Samhita with devotion whilst performing Shraddha, the rites for ancestors, and feeding Brahmins, all their ancestors attain the great region of Shiva. The devotee who observes fast on Chaturdashi and reads that Samhita under the bilva tree is directly identified with Shiva and is worshipped by the gods themselves. The other Samhitas no doubt bestows the benefit of fulfilling all cherished desires, but these two Samhitas, Rudra and Kailasa, are particularly excellent as they're full of divine sports and divine knowledge. One sage asked, Suta, can you tell us about the structure of this great work? Suta nodded. The Shiva Purana is extolled on a par with the Vedas themselves. It was created by Lord Shiva at the very beginning, and is commensurate with the Supreme Brahman, ultimate reality itself. Originally, the Shiva Purana was of enormous size, consisting of 12 sacred Samhitas, VIDYESVARA, the section on sacred knowledge, Rudra, on transformation and destruction, Vinayaka, on Ganesha and removing obstacles, Omika, on the divine Mother Matri, on the mother goddesses, Rudraikadasha, on the 11 forms of Rudra, Kailasa, on Shiva's mountain paradise, Shatarudraka, on the 100 Rudras, Sahasrakoti Rudra, on thousands of crores of Rudras, Kota Rudra, on millions of Rudras, Vyavya, on the wind and breath, Dharmasomya, on righteous conduct. Let me tell you how many verses were in each section. VIDYESVARA had 10,000 verses. Rudra, Vinayaka, Aumika, and Matri each had 8,000 verses. Rudrakada had 13,000 verses. Kailasa had 6,000, and Shatarudra had 3,000. Kotarudra had 9,000 verses. Sahasrakotirudra had 11,000 verses. Vyavya had 4,000 verses, and Dharmasamhita had 12,000 verses. In total, the whole Shiva Purana contained 100,000 verses. That massive work has been condensed by Vyasa to 24,000 verses, about a fourth of the original Purana. He retained 7 Samhitas, removing 5, whilst keeping the essential wisdom intact. And here's something even more extraordinary. The Puranic law at the time of the first creation, as conceived by Shiva, contained 1,000 million verses, 100 crores. In the Krita age, Vyasa and others condensed it into 400,000 verses, which at the beginning of Dvapara age was separated into 18 different Puranas. Of these, the Shiva Purana contains 24,000 verses, with 7 Samhitas, and the Purana stands on a par with the Vedas in excellence. Suta counted them out on his fingers. The first Samhita is called VIDYESVARA, sacred knowledge. The second is Rudra, transformation. The third is Shatarudra, the 100 forms. The fourth is Kotirudra, the millions of forms. The fifth is Ami of Uma, the divine feminine. The sixth is Kailasa, the mountain paradise. and the seventh is Vyasa, breath and life force. These are the 7 Samhitas we have now. And even in this condensed form, the divine Shiva Purana stands on a par with the Vedas, granting liberation more effectively than anything else. He who reads this Shiva Purana, complete with the 7 Samhitas, devotedly is a living, liberated soul. Hundreds of other sacred texts, the Vedas, Samhitas, Puranas, historical epics, and Agama, do not merit even a 16th of this Shiva Purana. Why? Because Shiva Purana is first expounded by Shiva himself, and then condensed by Vyasa, a devotee of Shiva. It is pure and brief, and as such it renders help to all living beings. As a queller of the threefold calamities, physical suffering, external attacks, and divine trials, it is unrivaled. It bestows welfare upon the good. Suta concluded with what felt like a blessing. Undeceptive virtue is extolled herein. It is, in the main, of the nature of Vedanta wisdom. It contains mantras, and addresses the 3 aims of worldly life, and reveals the thing knowable by wise people of unprejudiced mind. The Shiva Purana is the best amongst the Puranas, extolling the great being that glows in Vedanta and the Vedas. He who reads and listens to it with devotion becomes a favorite of Shiva and attains the supreme position, both here and hereafter. That is my answer to your question. The remedy you seek for all the suffering of this age. It's right here. It always has been. The sages sat in profound silence, letting Suta's words sink in. Several had tears streaming down their faces. They had asked for hope, and they had received something more, a complete path, a proven remedy, a way forward through the darkness. So let's sit with this for a moment. Suta's remedy for civilizational collapse, moral decay, and spiritual despair is a book. Stories of God, really. On the surface it sounds almost laughably inadequate. The world is burning, institutions are crumbling, greed and corruption are everywhere, and the proposed solution is to read ancient tales about Shiva and Parvati? How could that possibly address systemic failure? But dismissing this as primitive thinking misses the point entirely. Suta isn't claiming that reading a few myths will magically fix society. He's making a deeper claim about how consciousness changes and how that change ripples outward. All the corruption, confusion, and suffering the sages described ultimately originate in human consciousness, in what people value, how they see themselves, and what they believe about reality. Transform that level. Shift the basic orientation of the mind, and everything else can begin to change, not by force or policy, but by genuine inner reorientation. The Shiva Purana isn't posing as political theory. It's presenting itself as a technology for transforming consciousness. What's striking is how aligned this is with modern psychology and neuroscience. We now know that stories literally rewire the brain. Engaging deeply with narrative, especially mythic or archetypal narrative, expands empathy, increases cognitive flexibility, and opens us to new possibilities. But Suta doesn't just prescribe reading. He outlines conditions for deep engagement: fasting, vigil, sacred spaces, devotion, concentration. He's describing a ritual technology designed to move the stories from the surface mind into the deeper layers where identity and worldview are shaped. And what's striking is how empirical Suta sounds. There is no demand for blind faith. Instead, he says, essentially, do this with sincerity. Do it with devotion. Observe what happens. Fast and read with concentration. Feel how your mind becomes still. Recite the Rudra Samhita with reverence. Watch how your intentions clarify. These are testable spiritual experiments, promises of inner transformation here and now, not in some distant afterlife. And yet, woven into this practicality is something else. An invitation to trust that there is a higher intelligence holding the chaos together, even when we cannot see the pattern. Faith doesn't replace inquiry here. It steadies it. It gives the seeker the courage to step into the unknown, and the humility to accept guidance from something greater than the thinking mind. Suta also claims that the Shiva Purana dissolves the conflicts of doctrine and sect not by declaring itself superior, but by showing how all paths ultimately converge in Shiva. It honors every deity, because all deities rest in him. It embraces every seeker, because he is found in every heart. In our fractured world, where ideologies compete like warring tribes, this vision of unity and diversity feels like a breath of divine air. So can sacred narrative truly touch systemic problems? I don't know. But I do know this: every system is made of hearts and minds, and hearts and minds have always been transformed by the touch of the divine. Maybe Suta is right. Maybe the real revolution begins not in the world, but in consciousness aligned with him, capital HIM, or at the very least, perhaps this practice, turning toward something sacred, giving full attention to stories that reveal the eternal, becomes an act of spiritual resistance in a world addicted to noise and fragmentation, a quiet rebellion of devotion. Next time, we'll finally begin the stories that supposedly carry this transformative power. But I'd love to hear your perspective. Comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell. Until next time, keep questioning, keep practicing, and keep dancing with the mystic.